What's up, guys? It's your boy, the essential John L. Crossfire, aka the real main event, aka the Rogue Soldier, and today you're about to learn firsthand just what it's like to be caught in the crossfire. But above all else, prepare yourself, because in this very moment, today, right now, you are about to be caught in conversation. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 26 of the podcast. I trust that you're all doing well. I'm finally going back to the eye specialist in a few days' time. Fingers crossed nothing comes along and screws that up. It'll actually be tomorrow when this episode originally drops, so I'm both looking forward to that and also kind of terrified at the same time of what I'm going to be told, but nonetheless, I'm doing pretty good physically and mentally at the moment. Dentist strips have slowly started to pay off as well, and I trust that you guys are doing well in your own right, and if that's not the case, then hopefully I can be a great distraction for at least half an hour to an hour. I'm currently enjoying a nice grape-flavored Musashi energy drink. It's meant to be healthy, but it's probably not, but I also have a bottle of spring water next to me, so I can still claim to be a bit of a healthy boy. We have all of the wrestling this week. If you're reading the episode description by the time this is up, you're already aware of that. But today I'm going to be doing quick highlights / a recap of Ring of Honor's Honor for All event, Impact Wrestling's Turning Point event, and WWE Survivor Series, which of course myself and Mrs. Crossfire previewed on the last episode. Following that, I'm going to be doing a full review or recap-ish, I still think I should put that on a shirt, of House of Glory's Born Again event. But before we get into that, we have just finished the last episode of Superstore last night upon recording this, and I'm having all of the feels for this one. I've mentioned the show a few times here on the podcast, but seriously, if you haven't checked it out yet, get on that. Season 1 to 5 are on Netflix, and the 6th and final season is on Binge, of course. If you're listening outside of Australia, I don't know where you'd find it. My bad. It's probably still, on Netflix or some sort of, HBO Max. I don't know. Who knows? Quick Google search or something like that will probably point you in the right direction. But nonetheless, Disney Plus have just dropped the first 2 episodes of Hawkeye. I'm so freaking keen to get a chance to sink my teeth into that. Probably won't be until next week or this week once this episode drops. You may have noticed that I've finally put together some cover art for the individual episodes. I posted them on my social medias, and while putting these together, I was binge watching the hell out of American Dad. I watched almost the entire first season on Disney Plus. I went to watch Family Guy because I was about halfway through season 3 on Stan, because I started rewatching that again because it had been a while, so I wanted to start from the beginning, but found out that they've actually taken it off of there, so big sad there. I'm assuming someone else will pick it up. Disney Plus has the last 2 seasons of Family Guy, so hopefully the rest of it will end up there, but then with American Dad, they have all of the seasons except for the last 2, so a little bit of opposites there, I guess, but hopefully, somewhere here in Australia does pick it up sooner than later, but I digress. The song of the week this week, and you can blame Mrs. Crossfire for this one because she helped me come up with the name for this week's episode. The song of the week this week is Glory Days by Bruce Springsteen. Everyone loves a little bit of Bruce Springsteen, no matter what your preferred genre of music is. I mean, I'm sure there's actually probably someone out there that doesn't like him for whatever reason, but to those people I say, screw you. And if you're one of those people listening right now, then sorry. Not sorry. Again, that song is Glory Days by Bruce Springsteen. But let's get into the wrestling. Survivor Series 2021. First of all, with my predictions from last week's episode, I went 6-0. So, woo! I am the champion of absolutely nothing. For whatever reason, the pre-show match was meant to be a 25-man battle royal, but they switched it out for the Damian Priest versus Shinsuke Nakamura match, which was very strange since this is one that a lot of fans, including myself, were looking forward to. Nakamura got the win via DQ after Damian Priest snapped due to, Rick Boogs' antics on the outside, which made me happy because it kind of had elements of my Markapalooza card, and it still gave me a correct prediction in real life with Nakamura getting the win. The opening video package for the actual main show was great. Nice little collaboration with Survivor Series and Red Notice, which myself and Mrs. Crossfire also watched this week on Netflix, and we thoroughly enjoyed. Fantastic film. Got a little bit up in the feels when they played an audio clip of Mean Gene Okerlund in the opening video package, but pretty good video package. They opened the show with Charlotte versus Becky, which had a great video package as well in its own right. And this was a very good match. I honestly still don't know if I am just being worked or if there is general, genuine animosity between the two, but it was very well done nonetheless. The finish was executed to perfection, in my opinion. A lot of people were complaining because it was a roll-up, but I like the fact that, Charlotte tried to cheat, she gets caught, and then Becky cheats. Doesn't get caught, builds more tension there, gets Becky Lynch the win, which was a correct prediction from my end, so maybe I'm biased on that, but pretty happy with that. The second match was the Men's Survivor Series match, and this had a lot of twists and turns. Team Raw pulls out the win. Another correct prediction for me. As I said, 6-0. Match 3 was the Battle Royal, which makes sense now why it was switched out from the pre-show, because it was kind of the cool down after the Becky Charlotte and then the Men's Survivor Series match. Had some nice comedy in here. They used it to get over Pizza Hut, who was their big sponsor for the show. Omos was built up as an absolute monster, got his name right for the first time in God knows how long, and he got the win after 12 eliminations, making another victory for Team Raw on the scoreboard. I didn't do a prediction for this one, as it hadn't been announced before I recorded the last episode, but my pick for this was actually AJ Styles, who is Omos's tag team partner, so still went with Team Raw anyway, but as I said, didn't put it in the official predictions because it hadn't been announced by the time that me and Mrs. Crossfire did the Markapalooza episode. Match number 4 was RK Bro versus the Usos. Solid tag match. Took me to 4-0 with predictions at that point. As I said, 6-0. Repeating myself, my bad. I think the energy drink has kicked in. RK Bro picked up the win in the same fashion of my fantasy card from last week, of course. My fantasy card, I had Randy Orton catching Montez Ford in midair with a frog splash with an RKO. Randy Orton did that with one of the Usos here. Match 5 was the Women's Survivor Series match. All the drama in this one as well. At one point, the fans were chanting CM Punk, and I just kind of had to and roll my eyes because don't be a fuckwit. Like, if you don't like what you're watching, why buy a ticket? Like, it's that simple. There was a slight botch with the Sasha Banks elimination, which had both myself and Mrs. Crossfire screaming at the TV, but nonetheless, Bianca Belair was made to look super strong in this one. She eliminated 4 women and became the sole survivor for Team Raw. I like that they made Bianca look strong here, but they didn't do it in an over-the-top way either, making it, seem like she's being forced down our throat. So Team Raw gets the win, Bianca Belair gets the rub, and another correct prediction from me. Match number 6, / the main event, we had Roman versus Big E. Nice back and forth match. Both guys look strong. Brother. Roman got the win eventually. Correct prediction. Overall, it was a pretty solid card in my opinion. There wasn't really a bad match on the card. I liked the way that they kept playing the clips of The Rock's 25th anniversary stuff throughout the show. The stuff with Vince McMahon and Cleopatra's egg to hype up Red Notice was funny in both mine and Mrs. Crossfire's opinion too. I know there's been a lot of complaints online about how this is stupid and this and that, but it was fine for AEW to promote, Kong versus Godzilla, right? But because WWE is promoting The Rock's movie, it's evil because that's the WWE. But whatever. I digress. I enjoyed Survivor Series. Wasn't the greatest Survivor Series in recent years, but still held up there as a solid wrestling / sports entertainment card. Over in Ring of Honor, we had the Honor for All event. Straight off the bat, we had the Mecca Brian Johnson on commentary for match number 1, which was a big plus for me. Brian is an excellent talker and a perfect fit for color commentary in my opinion. Wouldn't mind hearing more of him on commentary in the future. But yeah, match 1 was a pure rules match between Tracy Williams and Taylor Rust. Everyone that listens to this pod knows at this point how much I love the pure rules. It was a great way to open the card. Very technical as expected. Johnson was just hilarious on commentary. Couple of nice submission-based false finishes in here, but eventually Taylor Rust would pick up the win, with an impressive win at that, via submission, making Tracy Williams tap out. Wasn't expecting that, to be honest. Some great intensity shown between both men during this match, and they showed respect to one another after the match. The promos leading up to the Fatal 4-Way Women's No. 1 Contendership match were all very good in their own right as well. We had Trish Adora versus Holodead versus Quinn McKay versus Vita Von Star. Miranda Alizé was on commentary for this one, and she did a great job at commentary as well. It was a 4 corners, Lucha Rules, sudden death style 4-way match. So basically, Fatal 4-Way match with, 4 corner rules where you have tags, but the Lucha Rules mean that if someone gets thrown out or rolls out, you can kind of come in and constitutes as a tag. All 4 women looked fantastic in this one, but eventually it was Holodead picking up a big win. I'm assuming it's going to be Holodead versus Roxy at Final Battle, which should be a good match. Match number 3 was for the GCW Tag Team Champions, which is nuts to think about. We had Effie and AJ Gray from GCW challenging the Briscoes, who, of course, the Briscoes made a surprise appearance in GCW and are now the champions. Nice little bit of cross-promotion there. And this was just a great action-packed tag team match that I thoroughly enjoyed. The commentary team here really did a great job of getting over the style difference between a Ring of Honor and a GCW type match. We had chairs, tables, blood, false finishes, but ultimately the Briscoes did retain the GCW Tag Team Championships, and the Code of Honor was adhered to after the match. Match number 4, we had Brody King versus Jonathan Gresham, which was probably my favourite match of the night, to be honest. They were competing for the No. 1 contendership for the Ring of Honor World Championship at Final Battle. They just went straight into the action, starting it off hot. Brody King's athleticism is always impressive to see for a guy his side. Gresham was made to look like the ultimate underdog in this match, and eventually Gresham did pick up an impressive win and will be challenging for the Ring of Honor World Championship at Ring of Honor's Final Battle pay-per-view. I'm very excited to see Jonathan Gresham versus current champion Bandito. And if this is indeed the last, the last event, if this is indeed the last hurrah for Ring of Honor, then 100% I need Jonathan Gresham to win at Final Battle, because as big of a fan I am of the current champion Bandito, and as much as I pop when he win, I feel like Gresham, definitely deserves to go down in the history books as the final ever Ring of Honor World Champion, especially with what he did to Ring of Honor throughout the Pure Rules Championship, and then, what he did with the actual Pure Rules Championship itself before he dropped it to Josh Woods. Like, he really elevated that and carried Ring of Honor as a whole on his back. So I feel like, if Ring of Honor is the last pay-per-view, if Final Battle is the last pay-per-view for Ring of Honor and they end up closing their doors for good, I think Jonathan Gresham 100% should be the final ever Ring of Honor World Heavyweight Championship. We got a nice little show of respect between Gresham and Brody King after the match. Shane Taylor was on commentary for the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Championship match. We had Matt Taven and Mike Bennett, aka the OGK. They were challenging LFI, Kenny King, and Dragon Lee. Good back and forth match. The OGK are the new Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champions and will be defending them against the Briscoes at Final Battle. Again, that's another one I am really looking forward to. Both teams deserve to go down as the final ever Ring of Honor Tag Team Champions if they are truly closing their doors. And then the main event for Ring of Honor's Honor for All event was a non-title no DQ match between current Ring of Honor World Champion Bandito and his arch nemesis, his rival, longtime tag team partner, Flamita. These two, they just have extremely long history at this point. EC3 was on commentary for this one here. Very back and forth match, super fast paced, as expected, I'm sure. Bandito got the win to build momentum towards Final Battle, where he will be defending against Jonathan Gresham, as I just mentioned moments ago. Pretty decent show overall, was a pretty good way to kill 2 hours, and most of the time I didn't even realize that there wasn't any fans there because the matches were just all so action-packed. But over at Impact's Turning Point event, Jordynne Grace and Chelsea Green had a pretty solid match on the pre-show, with Jordynne successfully defending her Impact Digital Media Championship. I would very much like to see these two face off again in the future, perhaps on a main pay-per-view card, and just let them go all out, because the match they had here was very good. They're both very talented women in their own right. I popped super hard at one point in the match. Jordynne Grace hit a Rikishi driver, and it just looked super smooth. And of course, Chelsea in her own right sold it absolutely beautifully. And then speaking of Chelsea selling, she sold the absolute heck out of the Grace driver, of course, Jordynne Grace's pump handle Michinoku driver finishing move. And as I compliment on this pod across many different promotions, the opening video package to the main show was so beautifully done. Definitely set the tone for the entire Turning Point event. The opening match to the main show, the main card, was the inevitable Ace Austin versus Chris Sabin, which had me hyped from the get-go. They had a pretty decent match a few weeks back on Impact to set this up, but this is a match that I'd probably never get sick of. And they've still, even with the 2 matches they've had, they've barely scratched the surface, at least in my opinion, of what both guys are capable of doing. But pretty solid match. There was a scary spot in the match where Ace went for a slingshot Russian leg sweep, and he kind of slipped it a little bit, but luckily he still landed it enough to where he didn't injure himself. But yeah, perfect match to be the opener. It was fast-paced, back and forth. I swear, Ace Austin just keeps getting better and better. And obviously Chris Sabin, he's just aging like a fine wine at this point. He just somehow keeps putting on great match after great match after great match. I was kind of hoping to see Ace Austin pull out the win here, but made more sense for Sabin to get the win, which he did. Rich Swann and VSK had a fairly decent match as well. It was obviously very much designed to build momentum for Rich Swann, but VSK certainly held his own. Zicky Dice actually was at ringside in support of VSK. He was wearing a super dope, it was a pink leopard print dress shirt, and it's just absolute goals. I don't know where he got it, probably custom made knowing my luck, but I want it. It was awesome. The finish to the Matt Cardona and W. Morrissey match was very well done, with Moose getting involved. Big pop for the Inspiration having Harlem Heat inspired gear in their match against the Decay. Lots of fire, pun not intended, talking about Harlem Heat, but lots of fire shown by the Decay in the early goings of the tag team match, which I greatly appreciated for the story that they were trying to tell. Excellent teamwork by the Inspiration shown here. They're another one, I don't know if it was just because they had chains on in WWE or what, but they seem to just keep getting better and better as a tag team as well, of course. Cassie Lee, Jessie McKay, 2 supremely talented women. The Triple Threat X Division Championship match between Trey Miguel, Laredo Kid, and Steve Macklin was absolutely fantastic. Probably match of the night for me, maybe tied with the main event, but I just love the drama here, especially with the double pin finish. One guy kicked out, one guy didn't, but Trey still gets the win nonetheless. That might be the first time I've ever actually seen a finish done like that. But yeah, Trey Miguel still being the X Division champion as a mark, that makes me happy. Mickie James and Mercedes Martinez, they had an absolute banger of a match for the Impact Knockout Championship. Mickie retained, which, as marks, myself and Mrs. Crossfire were a little bit disappointed because we were pulling for Mercedes Martinez, but after the match, Mickie James was attacked by Deonna Purrazzo, setting up a rematch between Mickie and Deonna from Bound for Glory. This will take place at the next pay-per-view in January at Hard to Kill. Also at Hard to Kill, it was announced backstage after this match that the winner of Mickie and Deonna will face the winner of the first ever Knockouts Ultimate X match, which will be taking place at Hard to Kill. I'm so keen for that one. Hard to Kill only has a handful of matches announced, but it already just sounds amazing. The Good Brothers retain their Impact Tag Team Championships in a very heelish way. I dig it. Still begs the question, who the hell's going to beat them? Josh Alexander come to cut a promo about being mad that he wasn't on the show, but he was interrupted by Jonah. Jonah is here, of course, formerly Jonah Rock, formerly Bronson Reed, now just Jonah, in all caps. That's important. Big pop there. I need to see Jonah versus Willie Mack in Impact sooner than later as well. That'd be dope. But the main event match was a Full Metal Mayhem match, of course, Impact's version of TLC, between Moose and Eddie Edwards, with Moose's Impact Championship on the line. And this match was just everything you'd expect from these two and more. All the drama, all the action. Eventually, Moose retains the Impact World Championship, which, in my opinion, was the right thing to do. Of course, it didn't happen without the help from W. Morrissey, who, of course, was returning the favor from Moose helping him earlier in the night. Eddie Edwards did get a few nice false finishes in here, though, and it honestly could have gone either way. I didn't see the spoilers for this match, and I honestly was on the edge of my seat. I didn't know who was going to retain, but I'm glad to see that Moose retained. But they also exposed the wooden surface of the ring in this match. Of course, most people know at this point, finally, that yes, wrestling rings are indeed wood and steel. No trampolines here. You know, a lot of the time years ago, people would say, oh, wrestling rings are like trampolines, right? And there's probably a lot of people out there that still think that, but a lot of people nowadays, in this day and age at least, are more self-aware to know that, okay, even if it's not their thing, they're still falling on some pretty hard surfaces. It's about half an inch thick, padding, if that, on top of wood and steel. So I like that little aspect there, but solid event all around. They certainly, had better events, but they've certainly had a lot worse as well. The main event definitely delivered, but as I said, so did the X Division and Knockouts Championship matches respectively. I'm really looking forward to the Hard to Kill pay-per-view in January. In the wrestling news this week, it's been a few weeks since I've done a proper wrestling news segment, but in the news this week nonetheless, starting off with some somewhat sad news, Jim Ross has announced, he announced a few weeks ago that he'd been suffering from skin cancer, and this week he's announced that he will be starting his first of 22 radiation therapy sessions to try and get rid of it, and he will be off TV for at least a month, if not longer, depending on how long they take and how long it takes to heal, etc., etc. But we here, at the Court in Conversation pod, in the Crossfire household, both myself and Mrs. Crossfire, we're sending all the positive vibes, all the well wishes to Mr. Ross, for whatever that's worth, but we're pulling for you. Like, Jim, as many know at this point, is someone that I have looked up to / admired for some time now, both as a commentator and just as a, brilliant mind for professional wrestling in general. He has inspired a lot of what I have done in wrestling. So yeah, we're pulling for you, Jim. Get well soon, sir. On WWE Raw this week, Seth Rollins was attacked by a fan after the fan was essentially catfished by a fake Seth Rollins, account. The fan has been charged with assault after the fact and banned from future WWE events, rightfully so. But to round out the wrestling news portion for this week, current NXT star Johnny Gargano, as reported by Fightful, is still yet to re-sign a new contract. He has apparently signed on an extension of the contract so that he can work the War Games event in a couple of weeks' time, but he's currently weighing up his options, even though WWE officials are allegedly making a hard play and strong offers to get him to re-sign. I personally can see Johnny Gargano re-signing, but at the same time, at this point, it wouldn't surprise me if he went the same way that Adam Cole did earlier this year, worked the NXT TakeOver event, pay-per-view, call it what you want, and then leave. Let me know where you guys think Johnny Gargano is going to end up, where you'd want him to end up. The match of the week this week, because of an awesome six-man match on the show that I'm about to cover, the match of the week this week is for the WWE Cruiserweight Championship at Royal Rumble 2006 in a sudden death scramble / six-pack challenge. They dubbed it as the Cruiserweight Open Challenge. It was specifically open to any former Cruiserweight champion. We had Kid Cash the current champion, defending against Paul London, Nunzio, Funaki, Jamie Noble, and Gregory Helms. Again, from the Royal Rumble 2006 for the Cruiserweight Champion. That's Paul London versus Nunzio versus Funaki versus Jamie Noble versus Gregory Helms versus Kid Cash. This is a super underrated match, in my opinion. But now, for my full review, or recap-ish, I still think I should put that on a shirt, of House of Glory's Born Again event. Straight off the bat, in terms of production, the picture was pretty decent, but a lot of the feedback from the speakers during the entrance themes were a bit, hit and miss, but still solid production all around. And I'm sure if you were there live and in person, it would have been absolutely fire. It would have been fine. But match number 1, we had a singles match. We had Rocky Romero versus Cashflow Ken Broadway. I believe this was my first time ever actually seeing Ken Broadway, but he certainly was very impressive. He has a fairly impressive physique as well. Rocky Romero very much controlled the pace of this match, but it was still very back and forth in terms of the actual action. Broadway hit a really cool looking, slash devastating lung blower, backstabber, call it what you want, while Rocky was draped on the second rope in the corner. Eventually, Broadway picked up the win with a bridging pop-up German suplex. Very good stuff there. Match number 2 was a tag team match. We had The Rep, Nate Carter and Dave McCall versus the New York Wrecking Crew of Chris Seaton and Smooth Blackman. First time seeing both of these teams, but just like Ken Broadway moments ago, I was very impressed with what I saw. We started the match hot and heavy with some fast-paced, high-impact offense. Blackman and Seaton of the New York Wrecking Crew would have a bit of miscommunication a few times throughout this match, but they'd go on to isolate McCall of The Rep in true tag team fashion. After cutting McCall off a couple of times, Nate Carter finally got the hot tag. Carter would stumble a little bit, but still came in like a house of fire. Is it house of fire or house on fire? Who knows? Whatever. I don't know. Unfortunately, the numbers game became too much, and after a big spinebuster from Seaton and then a roll-up with a handful of tights, the New York Wrecking Crew did get the win, but they still continued to argue and have words with each other after the match. And then the fans would give The Rep a standing ovation. Definitely, I'm not sure, whether I'd say I'm a fan of either team just yet, but they still held my attention, and I definitely wouldn't mind seeing more of them in the future. Match number 3, we had a sudden death scramble match, or a suicide six-way as they dubbed it. On commentary, we had the Mighty Mante versus Encore versus Smiley versus Joey Silva versus Nolo Catano versus Ace Austin. I was only familiar with 2 people in this match, that being Smiley and, of course, Impact Wrestling's Ace Austin. Lots of different characters in this match, though. It was super indie-rific, but I dug the shit out of it. We started off with Nolo Catano and Mighty Mante showing, their fast-paced action, and then the guys kind of just cycled in and out, giving everyone a chance, to get their shit in. I really need to see Smiley versus Ace Austin in a singles match, because I feel like that'd just be dope just from their couple of little interactions in this match here. Encore was pretty impressive, though. I think he made me pretty much an instant fan. He clearly has a lot of talent. We had some nice comedy in here as well with Encore, Joey Silva, and the referee, which gave both myself and Mrs. Crossfire a good chuckle before Ace Austin, the ultimate heel, came in and interrupted it. Encore versus Ace Austin would be a great singles match too, from what I saw here. Joey Silva was very impressive. He did a rope walk moonsault, complete with dancing while he was walking the top rope. Very impressive. Safe to say, this match was kind of almost a coming out party for Encore in many ways. Of course, everyone in this match was impressive as hell. Safe to say as well that Mrs. Crossfire became almost an instant fan of Smiley and Encore as well. But both Joey Silva and Nolo Catano had very unorthodox and innovative offense. Smiley, of course, the master of that in his own right. Mighty Mante eventually picks up the win with a Dragon Rana off the top rope by pinning Smiley. Super flippy high spot match, but goddamn, it was good. Match number 4, we had a singles match. We had Violet versus Ivelisse. Kind of shocked to see that Ivelisse is still being booked, to be honest, given her attitude problems. But I mean, at the same time, that kind of makes for a very natural heel heat. Ivelisse controlled the pace of the match, really getting Violet over as an underdog babyface. The crowd were very behind Violet when she had a quick flurry of false hope, and eventually Violet would pick up the win via submission with a very impressive bridging armbar. Match number 5. We had a triple threat match for the House of Glory Crown Jewel Championship. We had Charles Mason, the challenger, versus Loki, the challenger, versus TJP, the champion. All the hype for this one. TJP as a heel is honestly just the best. Very interesting dynamic in this match, as all 3 guys in this match are technically being presented as heels, although Loki did get a fair share of, cheers throughout the match. Anyway, I think he's very more of a tweener. But yeah, Loki and TJP would kickstart the match by attacking Charles Mason, but Charles Mason was very much in control for the majority of this match. He had a devastating spike DDT on Loki through the ropes onto the apron at one point, which looked kind of cool. Could have gone kind of bad. Loki, kind of on the top of his head, but luckily didn't spike himself too bad. TJP hit an excellent Northern Lights suplex on Loki while he, TJP, still had Charles Manson in an Indian deathlock. So nice simultaneous offense, 2-for-1 special there, as they like to say on commentary. But all of these 3 guys, they worked really well together. They got all of their shit in, brother. TJP was just about to get the win off a frog splash, or the mamba splash that he calls it, but Cashflow Ken Broadway would come back out, cause a distraction, because apparently there's tension there with him and TJP. This allowed Charles Mason to put TJP in a guillotine, but Loki would hit a double stump off the top rope and become the new House of Glory Crown Jewel Champion. And they've actually announced on social media during the week that Loki's first championship defense will be against Buddy Matthews, of course, formerly Buddy Murphy, at the next House of Glory event in just a couple weeks' time. All the hype for that. But speaking of hype, match number 6 / the main event, we had The Amazing Red versus Will Ospreay. Both men know each other very well at this point, so we had a nice semi-slow paced feeling out process to kick things off. Amazing Red quickly picked up the pace though, taking out Ospreay with a couple of suicide dives. The pace would then slow again after that though, as they kind of brawled around ringside. Red would take a bad spill from the top rope to the ramp on the outside. Of course, they've got the whole ramp connected to the ring gimmick. But yeah, Red would go from the top rope to the ramp. This allowed, Ospreay to take control. Ospreay very methodical in his attempts at dissecting Red too. Really good to see how much Will Ospreay has matured as a performer in the last couple of years. Ospreay did a running dropkick from the ramp to the ring, which was pretty cool. Amazing Red just selling it to perfection as always. The fans were eating up every second of this match, and especially when the pace started to pick up again, as were both myself and Mrs. Crossfire. Red hit a spike Rana and then a snap Rana respectively, and Ospreay sold both of them just so fucking beautifully. And then again, moments later, Red would hit a tilt-a-whirl DDT on Ospreay, and again, Ospreay, just the sell and the crowd reaction and just everything was just, it was absolutely just fucking mint. Like, this match was so much better than the match that have previously in New Japan, and that was an amazing match in its own right, but just the pacing and the storytelling mixed with the spots in this one was just, chef's kiss. I struggled to take notes, to be honest, in the end, during the ending of this match, because the action was just all over the place, and both myself and Mrs. Crossfire, we were just marking out, like, we were just losing our minds, like, just what a fucking match, like, so many believable false finishes. That's the important part. Believable false finishes. The commentators as well, they were getting so excited that their mics were short-circuiting. But finally, Will Ospreay hits the hidden blade. But Both men's shoulders are down, so we have a double pin, and the match was declared a draw. The fans were chanting for a restart. I was chanting 5 more minutes at my TV, and then we got a restart. But right as the referee turned around to call for the bell, Will Ospreay hits Amazing Red with a low blow, followed by another hidden blade, and Will Ospreay gets the win. Just so beautifully done, because even I was just like, I wanted 5 more minutes, but I couldn't be mad at how well executed it was by Will Ospreay. Perfect. He'd put on a banger of a match, but at the end of the day, he's still a heel, so just doing that, you want 5 more minutes? Yeah, sure, I'll give you 5 more minutes. Psych, low blow. Just, again, chef's kiss. So fucking good. Ospreay would cut a promo after the match saying that Red has actually let him down and then would attack Red. Cashflow Ken Broadway makes his 3rd appearance of the night, coming out to make the save, but would be blindsided by TJP. Ospreay took the mic again, saying that there's not going to be a Red versus Ospreay 3 because he has nothing to prove and the fans are a bunch of wankers and they don't deserve it, and yada yada yada, a bunch of cheap heat thrown in there. But it was announced at the next event that if Amazing Red wants to face Will Ospreay again, he has to work his way back up, and he has to beat, a selection of hand-picked opponents by Will Ospreay. The first of which was announced for the next event, is Amazing Red versus the debuting Malachi Black. Holy fucking shit. Both myself and Mrs. Crossfire were we were just losing our shit. Independent wrestling, especially in the US, but independent wrestling as a whole, is slowly starting to come onto a rise again. And I know we're not completely out of the pandemic, and I don't want to cross my fingers too much, get my hopes up too much that, because it could be cut short at any moment. But as of now, it's just on such a rise again, and it's good to see that it hasn't really lost any momentum. If anything, it's gotten better because, we're now that we've got it back, we appreciated what we missed, sort of thing. If that makes sense to you guys, kind of just rambling because just fucking wow. Definitely going to be picking that up. It's just a freaking amazing show around. For a lot of guys who I wasn't familiar with, they definitely, they left an instant impression on both myself and Mrs. Crossfire, and I cannot wait to be able to see more. But that will bring me to an end for this week's episode. I flew through that way quicker than I thought I was going to. My bad, that may be the energy drink kicking in. But yeah, just all the wrestling this week. So fucking keen for the month of December. We've got the next House of Glory card. They've only announced 2 matches, and it already sounds amazing. Warrior Wrestling's full card, for Warrior Wrestling 17, it looks amazing. And then obviously, we've got, the Hard to Kill pay-per-view in January for Impact. Wrestling Revolver is returning in January as well. Just all the wrestling, all the good times. The song of the week was Glory Days by Bruce Springsteen. The match of the week was Paul London versus Nunzio versus Funaki versus Jamie Noble versus Gregory Helms versus Kid Cash for the Cruiserweight Championship at the Royal Rumble 2006. As always, all my links are in the episode description below. I am the Essential John L. Crossfire. Thanks always for listening. I appreciate you guys so much. I apologize again that this one is a little bit short, but you, yes you, were just caught in conversation.